before you go home from the hospital with a medically complex kid, if they're coming home on any machines, oxygen, feeding pump, anything like that, you need to be trained. You're supposed to be trained. You're not supposed to be able to leave without knowing how to run all of these things. However, there have been many times where I've worked with families who have not had any training. They get home and they don't know how to switch the oxygen tank from one tank to the next. So, what happens when their kid runs out of oxygen? They're going to have to call 911. Um, so, make sure that you know how to run all the machines and that you feel confident and comfortable working everything before you go home. If you do not feel comfortable, speak up. Make sure that they spend the time to train you and make sure that you have everything you need. You need to make sure you have formula and all of the supplies that you need for a full month before you go home. It can take time to process your insurance, to get the supplies set up with the DME. All of that needs to be done before you ever leave. And I've just seen too many times families go home with what they had in the room and they have no supplies going forward, and it takes weeks to get set up. So they end up having to go back to the hospital. You don't want that to happen. So just slow down. I always tell the hospital, I'm not in a hurry to come back. So let's slow down, make sure we're set up so we can do this right and do it one time. So definitely slow down, make sure you have everything you feel confident and comfortable with all of the things that you need to do going home. Um, the next thing would be making sure that you're organized, you know where everything is going to go when you come home because it's going to be chaos. Make sure you know where the baby's going to sleep, where all your stuff is going to go, where's their oxygen going to be if they're on oxygen, where are you going to store the food? Do you have room for it? Those are important things. A lot of the food can't be stored in certain temperatures, like heat. So you can't necessarily throw it in your garage if you live somewhere that's warm. So make sure you have, a plan going home. And then everything in the room, your insurance has paid for. So you can take all the medical supplies that are in the room, obviously not like the hospital bed and IV poles, but the ambu bag, we've been told to take that before because the hospital paid for it. I mean, your insurance paid for it and it's in the room, so it can go with you. Um, the gloves, if there's formula in the room, if there's an extra G tube in the room, you can take all that stuff home. And if you're worried about it, you can double check with the staff. But I've never heard anyone being told they can't take the supplies in the room because they've already been paid for. And a lot of times, if it comes into your room, they will throw it out when you leave because it can't go to another patient. If they bring in a case of formula and set it on the counter, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to toss it. They're not going to go take it back down to the formula room. So take it with you. It's extra supplies. Make sure your meds are refilled, make sure everything is set so you don't have to worry about anything as soon as you get home. Just getting your baby in and getting settled. Make sure you have all your documents, you know who your DME is going to be, you know who's going to be supplying what, you know who the techs are, you know who the doctors are that are in charge of each thing, who's prescribing the oxygen, who's prescribing the feeding supplies, who's prescribing the diapers, who's prescribing what, so that if there's a problem, you know who to contact.